Welcome to the Reading Comprehension Packet How-To. How do I do this? A guide to getting the most out of this assignment. When I first get my packet, what should I do? You need to put your first name, last name, date, and class period in the upper right corner of the front page, right there, and the comprehension check page. That will be the last page. There's story on the back of this. You don't need to put your name there because it's already on the front here, and this is a separate piece of paper, so it needs to be there just in case those two become separated. When you write out your textual evidence, which we'll get to later, you'll put that same information in the upper right-hand corner of that notebook paper as well. Next step, read the story. All of our stories cover two different pages, front and back. This story, about half the first page is a picture, and you'll notice the third column doesn't quite go all the way to the end. As we go through these stories get a little bit longer, so we have smaller pictures, and this column may fill up. But you want to read the story. Next step. After we finish this story, we have questions to answer. These are our comprehension check questions. There are always 10 of them. Now there's detail questions and other questions. The detail questions have no shapes around the number. So in this story, question 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and 8 are detail questions. You notice they have no shapes around them. The other questions, and we'll get to what that means here shortly, right? But those have some sort of shape around the number. If it's circled, like number 7 is, it's an inference question. If it's a triangle, like number 9, it means that you need to choose a new title. If there's a square around it, like this, that's a main idea question. Let me give you a quick clue. 9 is always choose a new title. 10 is always main idea. Keep this in mind when you're reading this story. You're going to have to answer those two questions for every story you read. Now, you don't see any square brackets on this paper because it's one of the easier ones, and you don't see any diamonds. The square brackets means it's a critical judgment question. Let me quickly draw for you what square brackets would look like if number 3 had a mark like that around it. That would be square brackets. If number 5 was a sequencing question, it would have a diamond around it, kind of like that, a square turned on its side. All right. But this story doesn't have those, but I did want you to see what those meant. We have to provide textual evidence for our questions. For the detail questions, that's the ones without the shape, as number 2 right here, has no shape. Right. We can circle, underline, or highlight in the text where you found the answer. Then write the number of the question that it answers next to the margin, next to it in the margin. In this case, we're going to answer question number 2. You should have read the story, so you probably already know the answer to this question. Willie liked to walk along First Avenue because why? Because it made him feel good. Now I circle the answers. You don't have to do that. You can put a check mark or an X on the line, but make it obvious what answer that you're choosing. Okay, so this is a close-up view of the first page. The picture is no longer there, and the third column is no longer there. But that's so we can read it and make it easier to do this. We're looking for why Willie was walking First Avenue. We said it's because he made him feel good. If we drop to the bottom of the first column, beginning right here with where that paragraph starts, we will find the beginning of our answer. So we can circle, underline, or highlight. I'm going to underline. Willie arrived at First Avenue, a beautiful street with tall trees and neatly painted houses. Being here always made Willie feel good. And then I'm going to put a 1 right here because that's where I found the answer to number 1. That's my textual evidence for that detailed question. Now I've done it in pen here on the example. It makes it easier to see. I would suggest that you use pencil in case you change your mind and that you can erase it. So what about these other questions? Well, let's take an inference question. Number 7 was an inference question for this story. When Greg telephoned, Willie realized that, what? He realized that he wanted to be Greg's friend. So we'll choose that answer. But how do I provide textual evidence for this? Well, if we go back into the story, we will find that all of this is needed to sort of explain why we chose the answer we did. So, highlight all that? Circle it? Underline it? Nah, that's way too much. Starting here, I'm so glad you're the one who found it, Willie, said Greg. I could never find the courage to speak to you before because I know how good you are at sports. But now that you found my ball... Greg paused. Willie, Greg began again, do you think you could come to my house and play basketball with me? I mean, could you help me stop being so clumsy? I'd like to be a member of the team. As much as Willie wanted to be angry at Greg, he couldn't. After all, Greg was trying to be his friend. Basketball is easy when you know how, answered Willie. Would you come to my house sometime and shoot baskets with me? Asked Greg. We have a basketball hoop in our garage. You do? Sure, I'll come right over, said Willie, surprised at his own reply. And, Greg, I'll bring your basketball. Willie hung up the telephone. Roy, surprised by his brother's cheerful mood, asked, Isn't that his ball? Sure, it's his ball, answered Willie, but I was wrong about Greg. He's a nice kid. We can't circle, underline, or highlight all of that. What do? We're going to shorten it and write it down. Here's an example. You wouldn't have to write this word for word because this is how I use example, but I know that Willie realized he wanted to be Greg's friend because Willie recognized Greg wanted to be his friend. He admits to Roy that Greg is a nice kid. He cheerfully returns the basketball, and he's going to go play basketball with Greg. All those things came out of that section of the story. And you notice we condensed it down here to really one kind of long sentence. So if you have 2 or 3 sentences that explain everything, that's great. I don't need a whole 5-sentence paragraph with an introductory and a conclusion and 3 bodies or anything like that. 2 or 3 sentences that explain, condense all that text down. If you have any other questions, please feel free to ask me, or you can refer back to the video or the written instructions. Have a great time.